Okay, this is Stephanie. I'm starting at Solo Cafe today, and I wanted to get a quick picture of that. I'll probably show you the inside when we come back. Yeah, so let's take a walk. I am smiling like super loudly because there are a couple of things going on awesome today. One of which, if you can't tell, I'm in a beautiful part of Suzhou, S-U-Z-H-O-U, Suzhou, and just north of Shanghai. I'm here for work, but we came up a day early before we start work. How cool is that background? We came up a day early to explore a little bit, and it rained, which means right now it's only like 30 degrees Celsius, so I can actually do a video outside, albeit I'm in a small alley, as you can tell. So the traffic is a bit much. We will either stop wandering down other small alleys because they're so cute here, or we'll go down the main road. I haven't quite decided just yet. I think we're gonna head towards the main road. What I want to do in this video is, one, not get run over, and two, I want to fill you in on more of my language teaching background, because I've only brushed over it in the about me kind of video, about this channel kind of video that I did a couple months ago, and I feel like I want to take this opportunity, small street wins, I want to take this opportunity, let me show you where I'm going. I don't know if that came out. We'll try. I want to take this opportunity to tell you more details about it, because I think it might explain where I'm coming from and where some of my language interference comes from, and where some of my language, that I've known for a while is being reinforced, I guess is what I mean to say. And someday I'm going to have to actually use my selfie stick, because this actually hurts my arm quite a bit to just hold it out like this. Hi! That is painful. And then my thumb comes in. Sorry, technical meta information. How cute is this little area? Anyway, I have no idea where I am in Suzhou. Well, that's not true. I know I'm near the Old Town area, near a very cool door. Sorry, Old Town or Downtown. I think it's called Old Town. It is, actually. And we just ate at a Xinjiang restaurant, and Xinjiang is the giant region, which is the giant Muslim region in the western part of China. But, see, this is going to be a mixture video of where I am right now, because it's so amazing, and my language learning, my language teaching background. Here we go. We can do this. So, yeah. I didn't study teaching or even English. I think I was an English major for one semester until, yes, my first semester at community college, because I sadly didn't know what to do after high school. My parents thought that vocational school was a much better thing to do, and I didn't want to do a vocation. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Technically speaking, all the way through high school, I wanted to be a rock star. If you've heard me sing in any part of the videos, you understand why that didn't work out. My voice is not very good. And that's not an insult, that's reality. Anyway, yeah. So, long story short, I took a few courses at the community college, and I realized that college was different than high school, and I really, really liked the learning environment, and I wanted to do more of that. But when, in the first semester or second semester, when I took a language course, and the teacher, it must have been Old English literature or something, he played Beowulf in its original form, and he was so excited. The man lit up, like, he was so intensely excited about this. Here's one of the canals in Suzhou. They're known for having the canals and the old streets and stuff. He was so intensely excited about this old language, and now thinking about what I'm doing with the Chinese script, I can understand and appreciate what he was doing, but as 18-year-old me, I was like, are you freaking insane? I can't understand anything that's happening, and this is really disassociating me from the story that you want me to connect to. So I pretty much walked out of that class at the end. Nah, I wasn't very impolite at those days. I've changed. and decided to switch over, and I think I switched to music for one semester. Again, still wanted to be a rock star. It's so embarrassing. And then I switched. When did I officially switch? Oh, then I had to take time off for financial reasons, moved to California, and then I eventually started a community college there. Long story short, I ended up going to a polytechnic in San Luis Obispo and studied a mixture of a bunch of things, but I ended up with my bachelor's in this major that was part engineering and part business. And then I interviewed my last year there. I was almost 30 years old because I had to keep starting and stopping because I was putting myself through school and it was a bit challenging. So long story short, I couldn't get the job I wanted in what was then telecom. I wanted to work for mobile phone companies. I wanted to help wire the world. I swear to God, that was my theme in my head all year. I wanted to help wire the world. Okay, this street is taking me nowhere. I'm turning around and going back towards the big street. And I couldn't get the jobs I wanted, and I couldn't work overseas. I really wanted to work overseas. That was my main goal, and it was one of the questions that I would ask every time I would interview with a company, even if it wasn't one of my ideal companies. I would say, okay, well, maybe if I can get overseas, if it's a different kind of company, that's fine. Okay, fine. So, no. They're like, well, we don't make you, but after like 5-10 years with the company, then maybe we might ask you to do a year overseas in this headquarters. And I'm like, wait, no, I want to go overseas to work for you. But so it was very confusing. Like, I'd spent all this time in this major and getting a higher education so that I could do my dream job. Only my dream job, because part of this actually was the .com bust in Silicon Valley, very close to where I was and where I thought I would end up working, at least my home base office, where I thought I would be working. It all went to shit right about then, during my senior year at university. So the entire industry, on a big level and on the micro level of telecom, totally burst. And so that could have been part of the reason why the jobs I wanted weren't available. It could also have been that I was almost 30 by the time I was graduating. It could have been that I was a woman. There's so many reasons why this all could have gone to shit. Okay, so we're on the main drag now, so I don't know what the name of this street is, but as soon as I see a street sign, I will let you know. Right, so I figured out if I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted within a company, then I was going to have to do it solo. So actually there was a year in there where I did try to move back to the East Coast, live closer to some family, and find a job in telecom on that side of the country, since Silicon Valley seemed to have been imploding. That didn't work either. So I came back to California, started in San Diego, which I had never lived in before. Oh, Sichuanjia. That's the street we're on now. Okay, so came back to California and kind of worked my way up the coast, literally and otherwise, trying to figure out what to do. And at that point, I ended up in San Francisco in a hostel because I didn't want to invest in apartments because I was, number one, broke, and number two, didn't want to put down roots again in a place because I wanted to be overseas. I wanted to live overseas. I wanted to live my dream. I didn't go and bust my ass for almost a decade to not do what I wanted to with my life. So I was having a serious, okay, it's really noisy, serious time settling for a company or a place that I didn't like. Because let's face it, I grew up in California, coastal California, so if I had to settle on the industry to work for, the job to work for, and the location all at the same time when I already lived in a location that I liked enough, then it felt like I was doing worse than before I had actually gotten my bachelor's degree, and that seemed ridiculous to me. So I met some folks. Here's an interesting statue. There we go. Okay. Cheesy pose in check. Oh, I might actually sit on one of these benches or something. Let's see what's happening here. Okay, I'm going down another small street. I'm going to get so lost. I'm not going to get back to the cafe. My husband is patiently waiting there. Actually, he's got the book. He's fine. He'll probably forget that I came here with him. Just kidding. Alright, so point being, so I eventually stayed in hostels in San Francisco and started meeting a lot of Europeans and a lot of people from other parts of the world, and they were backpacking all over the freaking world on almost no money. Literally almost no money. And it was like, boom, something just connected for me. And I realized that that whole mindset we have in the US of you have to have tons of money stashed away to be able to like go overseas and live this luxurious vacation experience and blah blah blah, or you have to be uber rich to be able to live overseas and all this kind of stuff. And that turned out to be absolute bullshit. So I decided to save up a little bit. So I got some office temp jobs and I saved up for like 6 months, moved out, got a sublet and started living in the hostel. And so I ended up going on my first, I wouldn't say backpacking trip. What was the first backpacking? I don't know. This is not the point I wanted to make. I wanted to get to the language teaching stuff, but I wanted you to see some of my academic or qualifications background. For some reason, that felt important to have you know. I feel like I'm gonna get run over. 1 second. Okay. So push come to shove, I spent the next few years going back and forth, either living or working in hostels, and sometimes both, overseas in Ireland and Italy and Scotland and a bunch of different places, and I just started to write a lot of just experiences on what I went through, people I met, places I went to. I started doing a little bit of photography. I think I might sit here for a few minutes and get eaten by mosquitoes. How pretty is this? Right? Anyway, so yeah, so I did a bunch of that for a while, but then it got old. I was like, okay, I'm already, 31, 32. I want something a little more stable, like a year here, a year there kind of thing. And I had talked to a lot of people who had taught English throughout these travels, and it sounded like an interesting way to go. So I started to look at different places to teach, different certification programs to take, and things like that. And to fill in this gap of time on my first teaching job, I'm going to put the link to my podcast, because I am actually reading, as part of that podcast, the blog that I kept during my first teaching job in Taiwan. So I will leave that there, and if you are curious about that year, and my first teaching experience, my first time living in Asia, that kind of thing, feel free to follow us along on that rereading of that blog that I took during that time that I was in Taiwan. So that was my first teaching experience, was in Taiwan. No experience at all. Actually, my boss looked for people who didn't have experience because there were certain levels of pay that you were supposed to have according to the Taiwanese government, and if you didn't have like a CELTA or a TEFL certification and you only had a bachelor's degree, you were at this level of pay, and with more than that, as your qualifications went up, so did your pay. So he looked for people. He wanted to train them in the way he wanted them to teach. It's not a malicious thing. He was looking for having them produce lessons in a way that he wanted to. And there was a lot that I learned from that job, like a lot that I learned. I think that was the year of, wow, that was a big B. That was a year of classroom management for me, big time, like huge classroom management. It was teaching children from 3 years old up to 13 years old. And then after that, now I understand they were getting ready to take a college entrance exam, and that took over their lives, so they stopped learning specifically at night school for just language, and they started to learn just for taking the college entrance exam. So again, from 3 to 13 years old. We worked a lot off of books. We didn't create our own stuff. It was a lot of handwriting correction, it was a lot of repetition, it was a lot of physical response in the classroom where you'd say something, they'd stand up, you'd say something, they'd sit down, that kind of thing. So it was a lot of classroom management. It was a lot on how to talk to children. At that point, I was the youngest in my family, not just immediate but bigger family, and I didn't really know how to talk to children. So that was a really good lesson in that. And it also taught me, I'm going to start walking again, people are looking at me strange. And it also taught me that I'm not very comfortable / don't like teaching children. They were lovely. I loved talking to the kids in the break during the break and, you know, before class, and they're adorable, and I got really comfortable relating to children because, let's face it, I am a child on so many levels. But as far as teaching them goes, there's a lot of patience and there's a lot of behavioral things that weren't very interesting for me. Oh, I found a bench. That weren't very interesting for me, and I wanted to focus more on content than on behavioral stuff. So there's that. Okay, phew, look at this pretty little bush. I'm going to stand by it for a couple of minutes. So that was my first teaching job. I came back to San Francisco, had a huge reverse culture shock moment, probably the worst I've ever had in my life, and probably will be the worst I ever had in my life. It seems to be that your worst culture shock is, if you go home afterwards, is then combined with your reverse culture shock, which you don't hear about as much. Funny that. And then I took time off, and I went back to San Francisco. I subletted a room, I did some temporary office work, and I saved and saved and saved while I figured out what to do. And then where did I go? Oh, then I decided to do myself. Oh, then I traveled some more. So I went overseas, traveled some, came back, traveled some, came back, that kind of thing. And then I realized that I did want to give teaching a second try, but I wanted to teach adults. So I went in 2006, I went to Hanoi, Vietnam, which I love to death, and did my CELTA certification. It's a 1-month intensive teaching certification with adults, and a part of CELTA is the A in CELTA is adults, certificate for da-da-da-da-da-da, and I forget a lot of those, but adults is the A in CELTA. And so I wanted to specifically just try teaching adults and see if that was more of my thing, and that worked out really well. I loved Hanoi, I loved Vietnam, and I loved teaching adults, and Vietnamese adults. I'm going to sit down. This is not a very pretty background, I apologize. I'll start moving in a couple minutes. But it was really, really great. That first year that I was at that school, because a lot of the CELTA, the best advice I ever got is if you wanted to teach language, if you want to teach English, is to do your CELTA in a place that you want to live, because a lot of schools that sponsor the program being at the school also want to hire people who graduate from that certification. So, and I did that there. I worked for the company, or the school, where I did my CELTA. And that worked out really well, because then it wasn't a lot of hunting around and throwing CVs around and stuff like that. I just kind of stayed, because I already knew the layout of the school, I knew the classrooms, I knew some of the teachers, and so it worked out really, really well. So I ended up staying there for another year. And that first year, I actually worked there that year, and then I went to Colombia to travel and came back and worked there a second year. But that first year, we had this crew of teachers that was just, to this day, one of my favorite teachers' rooms experiences. People would say, oh man, I'm teaching LM3, I gotta teach blah 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 grammar point today, anybody got an activity? Like, it was insanely activity based. It was very much so like this very sharing environment. People had like stock activities that they really liked to do that worked well with the students, that got them talking, that got them using the language, and so they would share their resources with you all the time. We had a giant bookshelf of amazing resources from all different publishers and things, and I don't know to this day, I don't know why that library at the school was as amazing as it was, but it's one of the most extensive ones I've ever seen. And I've taught ESL in the US as well, and I've never seen a collection like this. It was just phenomenal. Phenomenal. So it was a really spoiling start to teaching adults, and I got so addicted to the aha moments that the students would have, and to the teacher's room, and to geeking out about language. And we would have so many geeky conversations about why are they making this mistake, or how can we do things differently to get them to stop doing that, or what kind of activities can we do to highlight and make them notice that this is happening, or how do we, you know, there was just so much really good dialogue around how to teach better, and that was amazing and somewhat setting me up for a fall. Because in the previous jobs after that, like I taught like late teens, early 20s, folks that wanted to go to university in Kuala Lumpur, but it was mostly foreigners coming into Malaysia to learn at Malaysian universities that were at that time teaching in English. So they were getting their English up to speed so they could study at a Malaysian university. And so we had students from all over the Gulf, and this is our next country after Vietnam. We left. By then I had gotten together with my husband. We went to Japan for a very brief conversational job for 3 months, which was very interesting, and it really, really reinforced for me that I am much more of a reading and writing person. Do you see where this is going? Than I am a speaking person, and I don't mind teaching speaking at all, but pronunciation, speaking, communication skills, I can do things, I can teach things, I'm good at noticing things, but it's not something that keeps my interest for terribly long. So I wanted to go more into the English for academic purposes because there was a lot more reading and writing that I could teach, and it would keep my interest, and I think my interest would, I would hope that my interest would go over into the students. So there was that. So we did the conversation job, then we went to Malaysia, and there we were teaching academic English mostly. And so I got to use a lot of my reading and writing practices, methods, and whatnot to a degree. And then there was some headbutting with the management, and then we left. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But that was also adults, but younger adults. In Vietnam, it was more of workers. There were some students, but it was mostly workers and people wanting to advance their careers. But when we taught in Malaysia, it was more of people wanting to go into universities there, in the English medium universities in Malaysia. And then after that, we had a brief stint in the UAE in Abu Dhabi, and that is not worth talking about. And then we came to China for the first time in Nanjing, and we taught at basically a foundation year program, which is much more common in the UK than it is in the US. Although we have quite a few of them now in the US. When students come over, they'll need like a year of what we call like polishing or upping their English skills before we actually let them take content classes. That is what we did in Nanjing, is we worked on their English for academic purposes, EAP, before they even applied to get into American universities. That's who I taught. There were also Australian university prep classes, there were UK university prep classes, you know, so on and so forth. So each class had their country of hope of where they wanted to study. This is not a walkabout video, but I can't help it when I see script like this. I just have to take a look. Anyway, I'm going to cross the street, so hold on. This is so busy for a back alley. Anyway, so let me think, where are we? Oh, we're in China. And so we did that year. We did our GREs, which is the graduate exam, to go to an American university for graduate level courses and qualify for certain scholarships and certain work study kind of things. And we did really well on that. So we went to graduate school for our master's in the US, which was a massive culture shock. We are from different states in the US. My husband and I met in Vietnam, funny enough. Yeah, one second. I hit the motherlode. There's a tiny pagoda here and a little bridge, but there's also some folks right across the way right there. This might not work. It might get too loud, but I wanted to share this pretty little spot with you. My fear is, if I sit here, I'm going to fall over into the water. Let's give it a try. Okay. So I wonder if it's even okay to sit on this bridge. Ah, I'm so sensitive. All right, so how pretty is this? Oh my God. Anyway, so we taught at the university, we taught first year writing. And I'm including that in this language teaching experience because the second year we were allowed to teach foreign students who were in the first year writing program. In different levels of the program. It's a long, intricate, bureaucratic explanation, but there are different tiers to the first year writing program in a lot of American universities, and so we taught, the second year we taught a lot of foreign students, which was so much fun. It was back to my multilingual population, teaching them writing in English, academic English. And that was really, really fun. It was a lot of hard work, a lot of grading, papers that were not I don't know, there was a lot of flexibility and then there wasn't as far as what we needed to teach them. So it was fun, but it was also very, very regimented all at the same time. And then we got some dream jobs in another country with a crappy job that turned out to fall apart. And I'm not even going to mention that country. Let's just let that slide. It's funny because when you teach English overseas for a certain amount of time, you meet people who have gaps in their teaching and countries that they've been to but they don't actually like talking about very much, and that's what I'm skipping over right here because it just happened. The industry is so fluid and so money-oriented that sometimes you just hit a job that is total and complete shit and you have to cut your losses sometimes, and sometimes you try to push through, and sometimes you get amazing jobs, and don't ever leave them if you get one. That's all I have to say about that. So where does that leave us? So after that we went back to Japan for a tiny bit, and then where did we go? Oh, we ended up back in California. We were trying to kind of settle there for a bit. I was sick of being visa driven, like needing a visa to work in a place. I was a little travel worn from all that had happened with our dream job falling apart, and so we tried to settle down in California for a bit, and it didn't work. And so I got the genius idea for us to apply to this PhD program in a place that we almost did our master's, but the finances didn't work out for the master's. So we got it. It was kind of like this whirlwind. We applied, got accepted really, did our interviews, got accepted really quickly. We were very excited, and we started that fall. It was like, I think April, May, something, March, April, May is when we did all of that, and then we started in like August-ish. And that's where we were, just before coming back to China this time. Again, teaching first year writing for a bit, and then doing some research work that's not part of this experience, this project. So again, teaching first year writing, teaching natives, and teaching non-natives as well. Part of what I wanted to do in this super long video was to show you the different language teaching experiences that I have had, because when I geek out about, oh, maybe this is why this happened, or is this why I'm doing this, or I'm kind of basing it not just off of my own language learning experiences, but off of all of my language teaching experiences, both in and out of the US, mostly out, to be honest with you, and with all ages. Literally, I've taught from 3 years old, which I never need to do again, all the way up to like 60 and 70-year-olds who are doing it either for a hobby, or some of them are still doing it for career advancement, believe it or not. And some of them were doing it for travel. I mean, I've taught all ages, all ages. I've taught specific language skills, which I really, really prefer, like specific conversational things, which is my least favorite. And then you've got like business English, academic English, and I can't remember all of them, honestly. Specifically for reading, specifically for writing, specifically for certain tests. And I know people hate teaching test prep for some reason, but I find when students have specific goals, funny thing, they tend to get to their goals quicker. Whereas for general English classes, oh, I hate general English classes, because people come in and they say, I want to be fluent. Do you know how long it takes to get fluent in a language when you start as a beginner? Anyway, a really long time. So expectations in general English classes would drive me crazy. Look how cool that is in there. Awesome. I don't think that's an actual street. I think that's somebody's home. So yeah, so I've taught the gamut, and I feel like I am taking a very long needed break from teaching, and I may or may not go back to it, but I definitely want to be a language learner, like full force from now on, for a very, very long time. Because I've put, when I was doing language teaching, my creative energies would constantly go into what I needed for the students, Like I would constantly be thinking about, like everything I would see would turn into a lesson of some sort. And I hope to God, after all that effort, it, I don't know why I stopped near the trash can. That was not a smart choice. See, I hope that that made it more interesting for the students, but it kind of drained my personal life and my creative life in a way that I just didn't fully appreciate until I kind of got burnt out. And I got burnt out, and then I took a break and did something else and came back, and but there's a lot to be appealing with language teaching. Those aha moments are addictive, not just as a as a learner, but as a teacher. It's amazing to see a lot of people in a class get something and to be able to use language in a way that's useful for them. I mean, that's amazing stuff. And it's hard to stop doing that, but I need to be selfish for a bit. And that's where this comes in. I'm not teaching all year. I'm working in the language assessment side of things, so I'm still using English at work all the time. Like, that's the only language I use at work. But the good news is that in my free time, I get to do anything. I leave work and I never think about work. As much as anybody who doesn't have a lot to bring home from work doesn't think about work. I mean, there's things that happens that you bitch about and stuff like that. But in general, I don't have to do anything other than check my email occasionally for work. That's it. All of my free time is mine, which after leaving the PhD program and the years and years of teaching and having tons of grading and prep and all of that, after all of that, this is such a golden gem prize. So I don't know if I can do this job for 2 years. There's a lot of traveling involved, which sometimes it's fun, and a lot of times it's exhausting. But I like having the free time. So if I switch jobs, it's because I found one that has even more free time available that doesn't require teaching. But my point of this video, and there is one, is giving you an insight into not just my language learning background, which I might do another video on in the next video. Oh my god, that's a big D. That is the price you pay for being in a very green place, is there's a lot of life here. Anyway, so I wanted to give you not just an idea of my language learning background, but my language teaching background, because I think that will help you understand when I analyze language. I'm not just coming at that as a newbie like I am to the language itself. This is a really cute little house I want to get in the background. How adorable is that? Anyway, so I do want to make that clear. And it's a really big misconception in second language learning, is that people think, oh, because if someone doesn't speak a certain language, especially if they're in the culture that does, that they're stupid. And people aren't stupid if they don't speak a language that's new to them. They just don't speak a language that's new to them. And so I'm not an unintelligent, unanalytical person. I'm just new to speaking and reading in this particular language that I'm learning right now. Can you see that? It's so cool. Anyway, there was a gentleman in there reading, and he was using the light from the door to shine on his text, and I'd love to walk up and at some point talk to him about, there's this cool little, can you see the bike? There we go. At some point it'd be kind of fun to interrupt someone. Is that done? And say, hi, what are you reading? And like look at his text and stuff. That's months down the line. Anyway, point being, I just wanted to give you some insight into my language teaching background, because that does, as they would say in academia, inform my language learning. I say that very ironically. If you're in academia, you understand where I'm coming from. Okay, this video has gotten way too long. If you have any questions about anything that I've gone over, by all means, please ask me questions down below. Look at this cool tree. Anyway, so yeah, go ahead and ask me questions. I'd be more than happy to answer anything except, I'm getting run over again, anything except the things I said I wasn't going to talk about. So there's that. That's it. I'm done. Whew. That was long, and it's very hot out. It's very humid out here, so I'm going back in that tiny little cafe. Satien. Cafe. Inside, look at that room. Look at that light.